The Western pro-life movement cares about protecting young mothers and their children from harm. But historically, that's also what the law is designed to do. Will those laws be restored? Yes, they will. And we will show you how. On this edition of Life Matters, with your host, Brian Johnston. Brian Johnston is the Western Director of the National Right to Life Committee. He has served in many capacities while advocating for innocent lives, as California Commissioner on Aging, as Chairman of the California Pro-Life Council, on the board of the National Legal Center for the Medically Dependent and Disabled. And now here's our host, Brian Johnston.
Welcome back to Life Matters. We're your program on the right to life. And what it really is, it's more than just emotions. It's more than just how we feel about babies. And you know what? I like babies. I'm a grandpa. And all of us should like babies. They're vulnerable. They're in need. But do you know that the right to life and even the decisions of the United States Supreme Court, they're not just about pregnancy. It's about whether or not a human being can be killed legally. That has great significance. If you've heard our program before, you know that we dig down to what the real issues are in the right to life. And we're going to do that again today. In fact, we're going to revisit the starting point for the right to life movement in America, an incredible decision. It's actually a pair of decisions, and that's Roe versus Wade. Many people in America have no understanding. They think they do. They think they understand Roe v. Wade. They think it gives women the right to choose, but it doesn't. Roe versus Wade, in fact, doesn't make any sense. And I can say that because pro-abortion lawmakers and even Supreme Court justices that support abortion, they don't like how Roe v. Wade is written. It's nonsensical. And we're going to spend time today going into the details of Roe versus Wade, why you need to know this, that it doesn't make sense. And of course, on the other side of the coin, it's Doe versus Bolton, the companion decision that came down conjoined with Roe v. Wade. It came down the same day as Roe v. Wade. It was supposedly dealing with the laws of Georgia. Roe was dealing with the laws of Texas. But Justice Blackmun put them both together. And in Doe versus Bolton, that's where he lets the hammer drop, where he licenses doctors to kill according to their best judgment. If they think they should kill the baby, they get to kill the baby, and there's no parameters. It's Doe versus Bolton. You got to really understand. But today, we're going to spend time going into what is wrong with Roe v. Wade. You're going to hear from a lot of different legal experts. I'm not going to have them on. I will quote them. But you need to know this. And that the fact is that many people who think they know about the abortion issue, many reporters, much of the news, much of public opinion and public policy is actually guided by an ignorance of Roe versus Wade. That's right. Public polling for years has shown support for Roe v. Wade. And the same poll, I'm thinking of the Gallup poll, that same poll that says that 70+% of Americans support Roe v. Wade, the same percentage opposes public policy today regarding late-term abortion, regarding the exceptions or the lack of exceptions. Most Americans want to see some kind of limits and control on abortion and somehow think that Roe v. Wade does that, even though it's admitted Roe versus Wade doesn't do that. So there's an incredible lack of understanding of what Roe v. Wade is, and of course what Doe versus Bolton does, because people don't talk about Doe versus Bolton. But it's these companion decisions that has brought us the abortion industry we now know in the United States of America. So when I come back here, we're going to go over 10 very specific legal reasons why Roe versus Wade does not make sense, why it is in and of itself self-contradictory. It cannot stand. And that's even at the admission of pro-abortion legal scholars. They like the conclusion, they like abortion, but they realize that Justice Blackmun put it on exactly the wrong foundations, and it's created great confusion. So we'll go into the 10 points why Roe versus Wade does not make legal sense.
Life Matters continues after this.
We are individuals that lived all over the world.
In some of the most beautiful jungles and mountains on Earth.
We were there as missionaries, but we have also become coffee aficionados.
Our travels have introduced us to the most delicious and extraordinary coffee we've ever tasted.
Now we import those same beans,
Roast them fresh at your request.
and fly these savory coffees directly to you.
Winged Spur Coffee. You will taste that rich freshness,
Roasted at your command.
then flown straight to your home.
Winged Spur Coffee. Try the best coffee you've ever tasted.
Go to wingedspurcoffee.com. That's wingedspurcoffee.com.
And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
Welcome back to Life Matters. We're talking about the Supreme Court decision, and in particular, the Roe versus Wade and Doe v. Bolton twin decisions. And today we're examining in depth Roe v. Wade and why it doesn't make sense. I'm going to make a reference to what I call, and what many legal scholars and even the Supreme Court calls, the Roe Court. When we say the Roe Court, we speak of those 9 justices who sat on the bench in 1973. And think of it this way. Think of it like a baseball team. A baseball team has so many players, and yet it keeps its name and it goes on and on. Think of the Cleveland Indians in 1948. The Cleveland Indians were the World Series champions. That was 1948. Well, in subsequent years, the Cleveland Indians kind of changed. The players changed. And if you want to talk about that World Series championship, you have to talk about those specific players and how they work together or not. So in subsequent years, there was still the team, the Cleveland Indians, but it was the 1948 team that actually got that pennant and went on to win the World Series. Quite an accomplishment. In 1973, the Supreme Court had certain players, and that decision of 73, Roe v. Wade and Doe v. Bolton, had incredible consequence. And in subsequent years, in talking about Roe v. Wade, even the Supreme Court justices on later courts talk about the Roe Court. The Roe Court is the court from that era and the decision they rendered. And so I'm going to use that reference now so you can understand what the Supreme Court is. The Supreme Court, as you know, is an essential element of our tripartite legal system. We have a 3-part government, the legislative, executive, and judicial, and each of them have very specific roles. The role of the legislature is to create laws and to hammer them out. That's why there's so many folks, so as much input can be put into these laws, and people can work out the details. It's a difficult process to make laws. The executive branch, the presidency, and all of the subordinate offices of the presidency, they're there to carry out the laws. The judicial branch is there, you might say, as the umpire, to call balls and strikes, to keep up our baseball analogy. So the Supreme Court is there to determine if the actions of either the legislature or of the executive are in accordance with our founding principles. If they're following the rules of the game, if you will, if they're actually according to the Constitution as we were founded in 1789. An important premise, it's guaranteed our freedoms, and the existence of all those 3 forms of government comes from the Constitution. So the purpose of the Supreme Court is to call balls and strikes. It's not to play on the field. It's a very specific purpose. So one of the first things you need to understand, what the Roe Court did far exceeded the court's purpose and authority. And subsequent courts said that very thing. And in fact, members of that same court, Justice Byron White said that they far exceeded their authority. It's not the place for the umpire to try to hit a home run, to play in the legislative arena. And yet that's exactly what it did. I'm going to go through some of these other subpoints, and then we'll come back and fill them in. The second thing, and I think it's critically important, because Roe versus Wade is a long decision, and in it, Justice Blackmun, the court had handed over all authority for both decisions, Roe v. Wade and Doe v. Bolton, they both dealt with abortion. They gave it all to Justice Blackmun. And one of the reasons is Justice Blackmun wanted it. Justice Blackmun had been an attorney for the Mayo Clinic, and he loved anything medical. Another program I'm going to talk about, his fascination, if you will, for the medical profession. But what Justice Blackmun did in Roe is he spent pages and pages describing the history of medicine. He described medicine itself and science and society's view of life in the womb. But what's stunning, even as he goes through the history, he sums up by dismissing the conclusions of history. That's right. And he'll do it again in some other subpoints. He will spend pages and pages explaining why these abortion laws, again, every state had laws on abortion, and society itself has disapproved of abortion. And yet, after explaining all of these things, he sums up by saying, this simply isn't relevant. It's quite astounding. Third, he directly inverts the history of English common law. As I said, he inverts and dismisses the history of science and medicine, and then he turns to the law regarding abortion, which had been dealt with, not just in the American colonies and in the American states, where it had been prohibited, but in English common law. It's very clear that that life in the womb, there was a compelling interest of the government to protect that vulnerable life in the womb. Those of you familiar with the English language and English common law, you know that Blackstone wrote out a whole dissertation on the nature of the English common law, and many who study law take a lot of time studying Blackstone's common law. He refers to it, and then he dismisses it. This is amazing. Those of you who want to talk about that further, what he's employing is what's known as a relativist's approach. It comes from the dialectic of Hegel, and that is that, well, here's an idea. Let's explore this idea. But I'm going to call the idea into question because there is another side of the coin. And literally it allows someone who is a relativist to explore ideas, but then assert, well, there's a countervailing idea. There's people who disagree. And so I'm going to give equal weight to the opposite idea. And these people can be self-congratulatory and think they've offered an intellectual answer by simply saying, yeah, but there's another side of the coin. Well, that's not an answer. I'm the first to recognize there is often another side of the coin, but you have to examine what it is. If there are facts to be examined, they have to go into detail. You have to demonstrate, as it's said in logic, QED, quod erat demonstrandum. If you're going to make a point, you just don't assert it. You have to demonstrate its merit. He does not do that. He simply asserts the very common, almost childhood dismissal. Oh yeah, but so-and-so disagrees. That's not an argument. You have to give an analysis, and he does that very often. So he does that with English common law. It's very stunning. Here's the fourth point. He has a flippant disregard for the existing laws of all of the states. He disregards that in many of the states they had laws similar to Texas, similar to Georgia. And why were they there? Why were those statutes passed? He completely disregards them and presents them as irrelevant. But again, that's not the role of the Supreme Court. It's not the role of the Supreme Court to start playing baseball, when in fact they're supposed to be behind the plate, calling balls and strikes. So he disregards all of these other states' laws and dismisses them in one fell swoop. We're going to go into all of that when we come back on Life Matters.
You're listening to Life Matters.
Well, hi. I just wanted to thank you for joining me. You know, I have good friends, children, young adults, and adults that have Down syndrome. And they are so loved. Their parents love them so much because they're the happiest people you'd ever want to know. I really love them. I'm going to tell you something, though, that's rather frightening. The government of France has now prohibited showing positive images of Down syndrome children and letting parents know how lovable they are. That's an actual law in France. Here in the U.S., 80-some-odd% of Down syndrome kids are killed by abortion before they're born. In France, it's 96%. So we're not a whole lot better. If you'd like to help out, you can go to the National Down Syndrome Society, ndss.org, to help out. That's ndss.org. We really are in a battle of ideas, and lives really are at stake.
And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
Okay, we're at point number 5. We're going through the 10 alarming errors and confusion of Roe versus Wade. The 5th point, and it's one you've heard before, he creates a brand new overarching principle that somehow includes abortion. And what he says is the right to privacy is what allows human abortion. That there is a right to privacy contained in the 4th Amendment. The 4th Amendment says you should be secure in your persons, papers, and properties. So there clearly is a right to privacy. How far that extends is the issue. Well, Justice Blackmun made up a term. He calls it the penumbra of the Constitution. And that term penumbra, it's from the Latin. It means almost a shadow. And it's taken from astronomy. It's taken from the eclipse of the sun. And the umbra is when the moon gets in the way of the sun and everything goes dark. So there's a shadow on the earth. But then if you're not exactly in that track of that shadow, maybe the sun is only partly darkened. And that's called the penumbra. And what Justice Blackmun says is that the right to privacy for an abortion, that emanates from the penumbra of the Constitution. So he admits it's not in the Constitution. In fact, he admits it's not even in the shadow of the Constitution. He is asserting that it emanates, how something can emanate from a partial shadow, I don't know. But that's what he says. And this is part of the right to privacy. Now, if that's true, if you can do in private things that ought not be done in public, and there are certain things, by the way. I'm a married man, and there's certain things that we have the right to privacy for, and it should be respected. But I'll have you know that if you can kill a human baby because you can do it in private, well, what about child abuse done in private? There's something wrong. If that baby has no rights, if that child in the womb has no rights, how far can we extend this by calling it privacy? And yet, that's precisely what he's doing. And he's extending the concept of privacy. Privacy is nowhere written in the Constitution, but it clearly is implied for certain cases. By applying it to abortion and the penumbra of the Constitution, this is a reach beyond any logic. It doesn't exist in the real world. The 6th point, the Roe Court. Remember, when I talk about the Roe Court, I'm referring to the players on the team in 1973. There are new players on the team, and there always is. And people need to understand the purpose of the court is not simply to build new constitution every time they sit. The purpose of the court is simply to call balls and strikes in terms of the laws and actions of the rest of the government. But they ignored. The 6th point is the court ignored not only the biological facts, which we've gone into. Science has explained the nature of human development for a long time, and we've only confirmed further and further the uniqueness of the human person. We know that not only does life begin at conception, that's confirmed scientifically, but every cell in that child's body screams out the uniqueness. The DNA is unique. They got 23 chromosomes from the mom, 23 from the father. This is a unique human being, and the DNA says that, and science says that. That's how we track down murderers, is through the DNA testing. Every individual is unique, and how much more so that child. So that science was dismissed, but an important legal concept, the person. Because the science was dismissed, the notion of a legal person is dismissed in Roe, and very specifically so. So this is an alarming conclusion he's coming to. I'm on point 7 about why Roe v. Wade is cuckoo, why it doesn't make sense. You may say I'm being dismissive. I've already told you, listen into other programs in our podcast, you can hear them, where we talk about Pro-abortion attorneys agree it does not make sense. And one of the things Justice Blackmun does in Roe v. Wade is he basically admits, and in pre-decision notes, the memoranda that judges share across the board, one of the justices, Justice Potter Stewart, sent him a note very specifically. He was concerned that the arbitrary nature of the trimester system was a serious flaw because even Justice Blackmun admitted that it was somewhat arbitrary, but he had to draw a line somewhere. And this is what Justice Potter Stewart stated, quote, "One of my concerns with your opinion, as presently written, is in its fixing of the end of the first trimester as the critical point for valid state action. I wonder about the desirability of the dicta being quite so inflexibly legislative." So even Justice Potter Stewart said, look, by creating this trimester approach, you're creating a new system of government, a new legal law, and that is legislative. That's not the role of the court, even though later Potter Stewart kind of went along with it because it was mildly tweaked. One of the law clerks for the Roe court, Jeffrey Stone, he was a clerk to Justice Brennan when the decision came down, and he recently said, everyone in the Supreme Court, all of the justices, all of the law clerks knew that it was legislative and arbitrary. That's the trimester system. There's an admission that what the Supreme Court was doing was legislating, and not for those states. For every state, they were creating legislation for the whole nation. That is not the role of the Supreme Court, and that's what the trimester system does, and it does it very confusedly. Justice Rehnquist really sums it up cleanly, and your understanding of the trimester framework should actually come from Justice Rehnquist. This is what he says, and I quote, "The key elements of the Roe framework, trimesters and viability, are not found in the text of the Constitution or in any place one would expect to find a constitutional principle. The result has been a web of legal rules that have become increasingly intricate, resembling a code of regulations rather than a body of constitutional doctrine. As Justice White has put it, the trimester framework has left this court to serve as the country's ex officio medical board, with powers to approve or disapprove medical and operative practices and standards throughout the United States." Close quote. And we're now at the 8, 9, and 10. I was going to give you 10 reasons that Roe v. Wade doesn't make sense. There's even more. But let me quickly sum up 8. The 8th reason is that seemingly, as we said, the trimester system has created these fences to prevent any abuse of abortion. Oh, it's very protective. But none of that is true because Doe versus Bolton strikes down all of that trimester hobbly-gobbly. All of the confused language about trimester is meaningless because in Doe v. Bolton, again, Blackmun wrote Doe versus Bolton regarding the laws of Georgia. And he's very explicit now. His whole goal is to protect the medical profession from any prosecution. So he said the health of the mother is an exception. Forget what trimester it is. If the health of the mother is in question, and he defined it as being psychological, sociological, emotional, relating to the age of the mother, any of these factors in the mind of the abortionist. That's the health of the mother, do the abortion. It's quite alarming because it renders all of Roe, in a sense, meaningless. 9th point is he asserts that the right to an abortion is fundamental. Now, people who respect the law in the United States and the history of America's laws know that there are fundamental rights. So he asserts it now for abortion. But here's the problem. He just spent the entire ruling of Roe and all of its dicta, all of its teaching, explaining the history of abortion, back through common law, back to the Hippocratic Oath, that it's been illegal, that it's been frowned on. And he simply has dismissed all of that. He acknowledges that all of the several states have specific laws regarding abortion. He dismisses it all and then suddenly says, yeah, it's been a fundamental right all along. It's the height of absurdity. No, it's not fundamental. It can't with a straight face be asserted as fundamental. And then the final reason, again, we could have some others, but finally, Roe says, yes, states have a compelling interest. Somewhere in there, a state can regulate abortion, but they can't. That's the weirdness. He literally strikes down the laws of all the states, every one of the states. And yet he says, states somewhere have a right to do it. When the subsequent court took this up in the Casey decision regarding the laws of Pennsylvania, it was a mixed decision. They couldn't come to a clear conclusion. The one conclusion they came to is that it's really hard to get a law that the states can pass. So they did authorize parental consent before an abortion, but not anything regarding the abortion itself because of the Doe v. Bolton language. And it's really absurd. But this is what Justice Rehnquist said, and I quote, regarding Roe v. Wade and why it should be overturned. Quote, Roe continues to exist, but only in the way a storefront on a Western movie set exists. It's a mere facade to give the illusion of reality. Close quote. He goes on, and a lot of people say you can't overturn Roe, but Justice Rehnquist was now very clear. He wanted it overturned, but he was in the minority. And basically he said that the High Court had actually overruled itself 34 times in the previous 21 years, and that the court's duty is to reverse wrongly decided rulings. He said, quote, justices take an oath to uphold the Constitution, not the glosses of their predecessors. And what a gloss is a reading or a translation, a gloss. And their job is not to uphold every precedent. Their job is to dig into the specifics of the Constitution. So Roe v. Wade has no foundation in law or logic. It's on a collision course with itself. It's Doe versus Bolton that has authorized and unleashed medical killing. When you understand that, you're going to understand that Roe v. Wade is a confused morass. It's a loud lady on the street corner that makes no sense, just babbling on and on. What is actually deadly is the companion decision, Doe v. Bolton. That's the quiet twin that walks through the community killing. Medical killing has been unleashed in your nation, and many people do not understand it.
If you have questions or comments for Life Matters, call 800-924-2490. Give us your name and the town you're calling from and a quick question or comment. Learn more about everything in today's show online at lifematters.life, where you'll find all the resources you need to protect life. Life Matters is a production of the California Pro-Life Council, the state affiliate of National Right to Life. Wherever you are in the nation, you can find out more at National Right to Life. You can find vital pro-life information and also find the access to your state and local Right to Life affiliate. Get informed and get involved.